My name is Lucas Miller, and I'm a 34-year-old software engineer. I've always prided myself on being a practical, level-headed guy. My wife, Samantha Sam Miller, 32, is an interior designer with a flair for transforming dull spaces into works of art. She's always had this magnetic personality, the kind that draws people in effortless. Together, we've built a life that looked perfect on the outside, or so I thought. We've been married for 8 years. In that time, I believed I knew everything about her. We have a beautiful home in the suburbs of Seattle, no kids yet, and 2 rescue dogs, Milo and Daisy. Life wasn't perfect, but it was comfortable. And then, one random Tuesday evening, everything fell apart. It started innocuously enough. Sam was out late, which wasn't unusual. She often worked late hours for her high-profile clients. But this time, I felt something, a gnawing unease in my gut. I told myself I was being paranoid. After all, Sam and I had been through rough patches, but we always came back stronger. That evening, while cleaning up our kitchen counter, I saw her laptop sitting open on the island. Normally, I'd never snoop. I trusted her, at least, I used to. But this time, my hands moved before my brain could stop them. I clicked on her email out of sheer curiosity. What harm could it do? My heart froze as soon as I saw the subject line of an email: custom ring order confirmation. It was from a high-end jeweler downtown, the kind of place where rings cost more than my monthly salary. My first thought was that maybe she was planning a surprise for me, an anniversary gift, perhaps. Our anniversary was only a few weeks away. I opened the email, hoping to confirm my theory, but then I saw the inscription: to the one who owns my heart forever, Love S. I stared at the screen, my mind racing. The ring wasn't for me. It couldn't be. She'd never called me S. Sam wasn't sentimental like that. Her love was shown through actions, not flowery words. And that's when I saw the name in the shipping details: Mark Daniels. Mark. The name felt like a punch in the stomach. I knew him. He was her client, a wealthy 40-year-old real estate developer. He was suave, confident, the kind of guy who could make a room stop and stare just by walking in. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My wife had bought a $10,000 ring for another man. The rage that bubbled inside me was unlike anything I'd ever felt before. I wanted answers, and I wanted them now. I grabbed my phone and texted her. When are you coming home? Need to talk. Her reply came almost instantly. Still working. Don't wait up. Love you. The audacity, the sheer nerve of it all. I was ready to explode, but I forced myself to play it cool. If I confronted her now, she'd probably spin some story. I needed proof, undeniable proof. When she came home around midnight, I pretended to be asleep. She crawled into bed, kissed my cheek, and whispered, "Good night." The scent of expensive perfume wafted over me. It wasn't hers. The next day, while she was at work, I decided to dig deeper. I went through her phone records and found dozens of calls and texts between her and Mark. Then I checked our credit card statements, dinners at fancy restaurants, trips to luxury spas, and even a weekend getaway at a resort I'd never heard of. My hands trembled as I pieced it all together. My wife had been living a double life right under my nose. That evening, I decided to push her buttons. Over dinner, I casually mentioned, "Hey, I was thinking we should renew our vows for our anniversary. What do you think?" She froze for a split second, barely noticeable, before flashing her perfect smile. "That's a lovely idea, babe," she said, but her eyes told a different story. The real drama unfolded 3 days later when I finally snapped. I told her I had a surprise for her and asked her to meet me at the jeweler's downtown. She looked confused but agreed. When we arrived, I asked the jeweler to bring out the ring. Sam's face went pale when she saw it. The inscription was unmistakable. "Care to explain this?" I asked, holding the ring up like it was a trophy of her betrayal. She stammered, "Lucas, I can explain. It's not what you think." "Not what I think?" "Then tell me, Sam, who the hell is Mark Daniels, and why are you buying him a ring that costs more than my car?" Tears welled up in her eyes, but I didn't care. For once, I wanted the truth. "It's complicated," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Complicated?" I barked, my voice echoing through the store. "No, Sam. Complicated is algebra. This is betrayal." The jeweler looked mortified. Other customers were gawking, and Sam was crying uncontrollably. But I wasn't done. I turned to the jeweler and said, "I hope this ring is refundable because she won't be needing it anymore." I stormed out, leaving her standing there in shock. That was the moment I realized our perfect life was nothing more than a beautifully staged illusion, and I was ready to burn it all to the ground. As I drove away, my phone buzzed incessantly with texts and calls from her, but I ignored every single one. I needed time to think, to plan my next move, because this wasn't over, not by a long shot. 3 days after the showdown at the jeweler, Sam finally broke the silence. She walked into the living room, her face pale and her eyes bloodshot like she hadn't slept in days. She looked fragile, almost pathetic, but I didn't bite. "Lucas, we need to talk," she said softly, standing there in her grey cardigan, clutching a steaming mug of coffee like it was some kind of shield. "Talk about what, Sam? Your boyfriend? The ring? Or the fact that you've made me look like the biggest fool in Seattle?" I spat, keeping my eyes glued to the TV. She sat down on the couch across from me, taking a shaky breath. "There's more to the story than you know. Please, just hear me out." I turned off the TV, finally meeting her gaze. "Fine. Start talking." She hesitated, fiddling with her mug. Then the bombshell dropped. "Mark isn't just my client or someone I've been seeing. He's blackmailing me." I stared at her, my mind struggling to process what she'd just said. "Blackmail? What the hell are you talking about?" She nodded, her hands trembling. "A few months ago, I designed the interiors for one of Mark's new properties. During the project, we got close. Too close. One night, after too many drinks at the project's wrap party, things happened." Her voice cracked, and she looked down at her hands. I clenched my fists so hard my knuckles turned white. "You slept with him?" She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "It was a mistake, a horrible, stupid mistake. I wanted to end it, but Mark wouldn't let me. He said he'd tell everyone, my clients, my friends, my family. He said he'd ruin me if I didn't keep seeing him." "Ruin you?" I scoffed. "How, exactly?" Her face flushed with shame. "He took photos that night. Photos I didn't know he was taking. And videos." I shot up from the couch, pacing the room like a caged animal. My heart pounded in my chest, a toxic mix of rage and disbelief coursing through my veins. "So, you've been buying him rings and taking him on spa weekends because he's holding some incriminating photos over your head? That's your excuse?" I had no choice, she cried, standing up and grabbing my arm. "Lucas, you have to believe me. I didn't want any of this. He's manipulative, and I was terrified he'd destroy my career and our life. Please, you have to understand." I yanked my arm away, glaring at her. "Understand? Understand what, Sam? That you cheated on me and then decided to play sugar mama for some sleazeball? That you couldn't come to me, your husband, for help? No, Sam, I don't understand. And honestly, I don't think I ever will." But before I could storm out of the room, she said something that stopped me dead in my tracks. "Mark isn't the only one involved." I turned slowly to face her. "What do you mean?" She swallowed hard, her voice barely a whisper. "He's working with someone. Someone we know." My mind raced. Someone we know? Could it be a mutual friend? A neighbor? One of her clients? "Who?" I demanded, my voice sharp. Her lips quivered. "It's Rachel." The air felt like it had been sucked out of the room. Rachel was her best friend. They'd known each other since college. Rachel, who had been in our wedding. Rachel, who had been over at our house countless times for wine nights and gossip sessions. "That's impossible," I said, shaking my head. "Rachel wouldn't do something like this." "She did," Sam insisted, her voice growing desperate. "She introduced me to Mark in the first place. She said he'd be a good client, but she knew what he was planning. She's been egging him on, helping him trap me. I found texts between them, plans to extort me for more money. Lucas, she's part of this." My head spun. The betrayal felt like it was multiplying by the second. My wife, her lover, her best friend, were they all conspiring behind my back? "And let me guess," I said bitterly, "Rachel's been helping you keep this little secret, too, hasn't she?" Sam nodded, fresh tears streaming down her face. I didn't know how to stop it. I thought I could handle it on my own. But now, everything's spiraling out of control. "Damn right it is," I snapped. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my mind raced with questions. Was she telling the truth? Was this really some elaborate blackmail scheme, or just a convenient way for her to shift the blame? And what about Rachel? If she was involved, how deep did it go? One thing was certain, I wasn't going to take this lying down. Mark, Rachel, Sam, they had all played me for a fool, but that was about to change. The morning after Sam's confession, I woke up with a singular purpose. If they wanted to treat me like a pawn, I'd become the king who flipped the entire chessboard. The betrayal ran deep, my wife, her lover, her best friend, but this wasn't just about me anymore. It was about taking back control of my life and showing them that I wasn't the idiot they clearly thought I was. As I sat in the kitchen sipping my coffee, Sam walked in, her face pale and gaunt. "I'm going to fix this, Lucas. I'll make it right," she whispered, as if that would undo the damage. I didn't respond. I didn't even look at her. I was done listening to her half-baked apologies and pathetic attempts to salvage whatever twisted version of our marriage she thought still existed. Instead, I focused on the plan already forming in my head. First, I needed information, real, hard evidence. If Mark and Rachel were conspiring to blackmail Sam, there'd be a trail. Texts, emails, phone calls. And if they were stupid enough to leave breadcrumbs, I'd follow them right to the heart of their scheme. Step 1: Digging for dirt. While Sam was at work, I tore through her laptop. She had no idea I knew her password, but it had been the same since college. Sam loves design. Cute, right? Not so much when you're searching for proof of infidelity and conspiracy. I started with her email. Dozens of messages between her and Mark popped up immediately: meeting times, project updates, and receipts for expensive gifts. But what really caught my eye was a thread from 2 weeks ago. "Mark, don't forget what's at stake here. If you screw this up, I'll make sure those videos go public. Sam, I already said I'd do whatever you want. Just leave Lucas out of this." Mark, too late for that. Maybe he deserves to know what kind of wife he has. The bastard was taunting her, flexing his power like a puppet master pulling the strings. But that wasn't the worst of it. I stumbled upon another thread, this one between Sam and Rachel. "Rachel, Mark's getting impatient. He thinks you're stalling." "Sam, I'm not. I can't keep lying to Lucas. This is killing me." "Rachel, well, maybe you should have thought about that before you slept with Mark." The venom in Rachel's words was palpable. My stomach churned as I read through the rest of their messages, detailing how Rachel had introduced Sam to Mark, knowing full well what kind of man he was. It was all there, evidence of their betrayal, their manipulation, their lies. But I needed more. Step 2: Setting the trap. I knew Mark wouldn't be satisfied with just the ring. If he was bold enough to blackmail Sam, he'd eventually come after me, too. So, I decided to lure him out. I sent him an email from Sam's account. Me posing as Sam: "We need to talk. Lucas is starting to get suspicious. Let's meet tonight at 7 p.m. Same spot as last time." He responded within minutes. "Mark, fine. But this better not be another waste of my time." Perfect. Step 3: Recruiting an ally. If I was going to confront Mark, I needed backup. Enter my brother, Alex, 38 years old, an ex-cop-turned-private investigator. Alex and I hadn't been particularly close over the years, but when I told him what was going on, he was at my doorstep in less than an hour. "This guy sounds like a real piece of work," Alex said, leaning back in my kitchen chair. "And Rachel? Damn, man. That's a whole other level of betrayal. Tell me about it," I muttered, pouring us both another cup of coffee. "So, what's the plan?" Alex asked, his eyes narrowing with the same laser focus that had made him one of the best detectives in the city before he left the force. I laid out the details: the meeting with Mark, the evidence I'd gathered, and my goal to expose him for the manipulative scumbag he was. Alex nodded, a sly grin spreading across his face. "All right, then. Let's make this guy regret ever messing with you." Step 4: Preparing for battle. Before the meeting, Alex and I planted hidden cameras in the restaurant booth where Mark and I would sit. If Mark incriminated himself during our conversation, we'd have it all on tape, proof of his blackmail, his threats, and his involvement with Rachel. But I wasn't just going to rely on the cameras. I needed to get under Mark's skin, to push him to the edge where he'd slip up and reveal his true colors. The confrontation begins. At 7 p.m. sharp, I walked into the dimly lit restaurant. Mark was already there, seated in the corner booth, sipping on a glass of red wine like he owned the place. He didn't recognize me at first, his eyes scanning over me lazily until I slid into the seat across from him. "Lucas," he said, his smirk faltering for a split second. "This is unexpected." "Surprise," I said dryly, leaning back in the booth. "Figured it was time we had a little chat." Mark chuckled, but there was a nervous edge to it. "I'm not sure what you're talking about." "Cut the crap," I snapped. "I know everything, Mark. The blackmail, the threats, the photos. Hell, I even know about Rachel." His smirk vanished, replaced by a cold, calculating glare. "I don't know what Sam's been telling you, but..." I cut him off, leaning forward. "Save it. I've got the emails, the texts, the receipts. You've been playing both of us, and it ends tonight." Mark's jaw tightened, but he kept his composure. "So, what do you want, Lucas? An apology? A refund for the ring?" I smiled coldly. "No, I want you to confess. Right here, right now." He laughed, shaking his head. You really think I'm that stupid? Before he could say another word, Alex stepped out of the shadows, his badge glinting in the dim light. Actually, yeah, Alex said, crossing his arms. We do. Mark's face turned ghostly white. For the first time, he looked genuinely scared, and that was just the beginning. The air in the restaurant felt heavy, the kind of tension you could cut with a knife. Mark's bravado had crumbled the moment Alex flashed his badge. His confident smirk was long gone, replaced with a panicked glare that darted between us. What the hell is this? Mark hissed, gripping his wine glass so tightly I thought it might shatter. This, Alex said, leaning in, is the moment you realize you've lost. Sit tight, Mark. You're not going anywhere. I stayed silent, letting Alex's presence sink into Mark's head like a slow poison. Mark opened his mouth to protest, but I cut him off. Relax, Mark. You're not being arrested yet. This is just a conversation, though I'd say it's in your best interest to cooperate. You wouldn't want the cops sniffing around your little schemes, would you? His jaw clenched, but he didn't respond. I could see the gears turning in his head as he weighed his options. Good, I said, leaning back in my seat. Let's start with something simple. How long have you been blackmailing my wife? Mark's lips pressed into a thin line. Answer him, Alex growled. All right, fine. Mark snapped. A few months, okay? I've been holding on to material. Insurance, if you will. Sam was desperate to keep you in the dark, and I took advantage of that. Happy now? Oh, I'm thrilled, I said dryly. But here's the thing, Mark, your insurance policy just became your noose. The turning point. Alex tapped a small, sleek device sitting on the table, a hidden recorder. Mark's eyes widened as realization dawned. You can't do this, he stammered. Actually, we can, Alex said, his tone icy. This recording, paired with the emails and messages we've already collected, is more than enough to sink you. Mark's panic deepened, and for a moment, I thought he might bolt. But then he did something I didn't expect. He laughed. You think this scares me? Mark said, his voice regaining a sliver of confidence. You don't know who you're messing with. I have connections, people who won't hesitate to make this little stunt disappear. Oh, I know exactly who I'm messing with, I said, my voice cold. A slimy, two-bit fraud who preys on people's vulnerabilities. But guess what, Mark? Your connections don't mean a damn thing to me. You're just another coward who's finally run out of places to hide. Bringing Rachel into the game. Mark's confidence flickered again, and I knew it was time to hit him where it hurt. You're not the only one going down for this, I continued. Rachel? Oh, she's just as guilty. In fact, she's the one who made all of this possible, isn't she? Without her, Sam would have never met you. Without her, you'd have no leverage. Mark's eyes narrowed. Leave Rachel out of this. Why? I shot back. She didn't leave me out of it. She didn't think twice before betraying her so-called best friend. And she sure as hell didn't hesitate to help you destroy my marriage. Mark's silence was all the confirmation I needed. She's already part of this, Mark, Alex said, his voice low and menacing. And trust me, when this goes public, her name will be right there next to yours. The plan in action. Mark was cornered, and he knew it, but I wasn't done yet. Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice steady and firm. You're going to confess, on video. You're going to admit to everything, the blackmail, the threats, the manipulation. And once that's done, you're going to disappear. No more contact with Sam. No more schemes. Nothing. Do you understand me? Mark glared at me, his jaw tightening. And if I refuse? I leaned in, my eyes locking onto his. Then I release everything. The emails, the messages, the recordings, it all goes to the police, the media, your clients, everyone. Your entire life will crumble faster than you can blink. Alex added, and trust me, Lucas isn't bluffing. I'll personally make sure every dirty little secret of yours sees the light of day. Mark sat back, his face pale and defeated. Fine, he muttered. You win. The confession. Alex pulled out his phone and started recording. Mark stared into the camera, his expression a mix of anger and humiliation. My name is Mark Davis, he began, his voice shaking slightly. I've been blackmailing Samantha Reed for the past 3 months. I used private information and compromising material to manipulate her into buying gifts and making payments for me. I also threatened to expose her affair to her husband, Lucas Reed, if she didn't comply. He paused, his eyes flicking toward me. Keep going, I said, my voice cold. I did it because I could, Mark continued, because I thought I could get away with it. But I was wrong, and now, I'm done. I won't contact Sam or Lucas again. I swear. Alex ended the recording and tucked his phone away. Good, I said, standing up. Now get out of my sight." Mark didn't need to be told twice. He grabbed his coat and practically ran out of the restaurant, his tail firmly between his legs. Rachel's downfall. But my revenge wasn't complete yet. The next step was dealing with Rachel, and for that, I needed Sam's help. "Lucas," she said when I told her the plan, her voice trembling. "Are you sure about this?" Rachel was my best friend. She was, I corrected. "But not anymore. She betrayed you, Sam. And she betrayed me. She deserves to face the consequences." Sam hesitated but eventually nodded. "All right, let's do it." We sent Rachel an invitation to a meeting at our house, where she'd face the fallout of her actions, and I had a feeling it would be just as satisfying as taking down Mark. But that's a story for another day. The dust had barely settled, but the tremors of what had happened were still rippling through every aspect of my life. Mark was gone, disgraced and humiliated. Rachel's betrayal had been exposed, and the truth about Sam's affair had finally seen the light. But the consequences of those revelations would stretch far beyond a single confrontation. Rachel's reckoning. Rachel showed up at our house 2 days after Mark's confession, dressed in her usual designer attire and carrying a bottle of wine as if nothing had happened. It was both infuriating and laughable. She strutted in with a forced smile, clearly trying to gauge the situation. "Sam, Lucas," Rachel began, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "I just wanted to stop by and clear the air. I feel like there's been a huge misunderstanding." "Save it," I cut her off, my voice cold. "We know everything, Rachel. You don't get to play innocent anymore." Her expression faltered, but she quickly masked it with a laugh. "What are you talking about? Everything? That's a bit dramatic, don't you think?" "Mark's confession," Sam said quietly, her voice trembling but resolute. "He told us how you helped him. How you encouraged me to cheat, how you introduced him into our lives. You were supposed to be my best friend, Rachel." Rachel's eyes widened, and for a split second, I saw a flash of panic. "Sam, you don't understand. I was trying to protect you." "Protect me?" Sam interrupted, her voice rising. "You pushed me into Mark's arms. You convinced me that Lucas didn't love me enough, that I deserved better. All while you were working with him behind my back." Rachel's mask cracked completely. "Fine," she spat, dropping all pretense. "Yes, I helped Mark. But you know what? You're not the victim here, Sam. You're the one who cheated. You're the one who destroyed your own marriage." Sam recoiled as if she'd been slapped. I stepped forward, my voice steady and calm. "And you're the one who turned a mistake into a full-blown catastrophe, Rachel. Sam may have made the wrong choices, but you manipulated her every step of the way. You're no better than Mark." Rachel sneered, but her confidence was gone. "So, what now? Are you going to ruin me too?" "That depends," I said. "You have 2 choices. Either you come clean to everyone, your friends, your family, your colleagues, or I will. And trust me, Rachel, I'll make sure they know every last detail." Rachel's face turned pale. She opened her mouth to argue but seemed to think better of it. Without another word, she grabbed her bag and stormed out of the house. It wasn't satisfying, exactly, but it was enough. Sam's redemption. After Rachel's departure, Sam and I sat in silence for what felt like hours. The weight of everything hung between us like an unspoken question. "Lucas," Sam finally said, her voice breaking, "I know I can't ask for forgiveness. I don't even deserve it. But I want you to know how sorry I am. For everything. For betraying you, for letting Rachel manipulate me, for being so blind." I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the broken woman she'd become. The confident, vibrant Sam I had fallen in love with was gone, replaced by someone who was drowning in her own guilt. "I believe you're sorry," I said softly, "but sorry doesn't erase what happened. It doesn't rebuild trust." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I know, and I don't expect you to stay. I want to try to make things right. Even if it's just for me, even if it's too late for us." For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of something, maybe hope, maybe pity, maybe exhaustion. I didn't know, but I knew I wasn't ready to make any decisions about our future. Not yet. The fallout. Mark's confession had a domino effect. The video Alex recorded didn't just stay in my possession, it became a weapon. While I didn't release it publicly, I did make sure it reached the right people. Mark's connections turned out to be nothing more than smoke and mirrors. Within weeks, his business partners started pulling out of deals, citing ethical concerns. Rumors of his blackmail schemes spread like wildfire, and soon, Mark was out of a job, his reputation in tatters. Rachel didn't fare much better. Word of her betrayal leaked into our social circle, and she quickly found herself ostracized. The friends she had once manipulated turned their backs on her, and she became a pariah. As for Sam and me, things were complicated. Rebuilding or letting go? Sam moved out shortly after Rachel's visit. It was her decision, and I didn't fight it. She said she needed time to reflect, to figure out who she was without Rachel's influence. I needed time to process everything, to decide whether or not our marriage was worth saving. We started therapy, separately at first. Sam was working through her guilt and trying to understand why she had let things spiral so far out of control. I was working through my anger, my hurt, and the question of whether forgiveness was even possible. Every so often, we would meet for coffee or a walk, trying to rebuild something: friendship, understanding, maybe even love. It wasn't easy. There were days when I hated her, when I wanted to scream at her for what she'd done. But there were also days when I saw glimpses of the woman I had married, the woman I had loved for so many years. Looking forward, the one thing I knew for certain was that I wouldn't let this define me. I had spent too long living in the shadow of Sam's betrayal, too long letting Mark and Rachel control my life. It was time to take back control. I threw myself into work, into friendships, into hobbies I had neglected for years. I started volunteering at a local shelter, finding purpose in helping others. Slowly but surely, I began to rediscover who I was outside of my marriage. As for Sam, she continued to work on herself. Whether or not we would ever find our way back to each other remained uncertain. But for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace with that uncertainty, because no matter what the future held, I knew I would be okay. I had faced the storm, endured the chaos, and come out the other side stronger than before, and that, more than anything, was the real revenge.